Four, three, two, one. And we are live, ma'am.
A very good afternoon to all. I am Swapna Phatak, working as teaching faculty in the Department of 5 years integrated MSc degree course in Bioanalytical Sciences at Guru Nanak Khalsa College, Mumbai. On behalf of department and GN Khalsa College, I welcome each one of you for the webinar The Art of Writing Proposals for Government Funding. I take opportunity to introduce our GN Khalsa College. It was established in the year 1937. We have successfully delivered 83 academic years. We work on the motto of essence to wisdom is service to humanity. We are accredited by NAC with the grade A and CGPA of 3.54. We have been awarded the college with potential of excellence by UGC, Star College status by DBT. We are recipient of FIST grant by DST. We are Zero recognized and hold one of the kind facility dedicated to biosimilars, which is called the National Facility for Biopharmaceuticals. The research is an integral part of teaching and learning processes in Khalsa College, for which we have the dedicated research wing in Khalsa College is the Department of Guru Nanak Institute for Research and Development, that is GNIRD. Now let me take opportunity to introduce FYC department. The 5 years integrated MSc degree course in Bioanalytical Sciences, that is FYC program, was established in the year under the research wing of Khalsa College, GNIRD, in the year 2010 under the aegis of our beloved late Dr. R.T. Sani sir. FYC under Star College grant has helped the student to imbibe the research culture right from the undergraduate level. Now I will throw some light on our today's webinar. As you all know that in India, various funding agencies are available which provide grants for a research in various fields. Funding agencies are government, non-government body providing monetary grants for scientific research areas like science and technology, social sciences, etc. It is competitive process in which potential research projects are evaluated and only the most promising ones receive funding. How do you write a government grant proposal is a skill. In today's informative session, our speaker will share her experiences and knowledge regarding the same. Also, she will guide us to improve our skills. I would like to request our head of the department, Dr. Kavita Pandey, to take over the forum to introduce our eminent speaker of event, Dr. Adita Joshi. Thank you.
Thank you, Swapna. Indeed, I'm privileged to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Adita Joshi. She's the founder director of Sanskriti Foundation, which is a non-profit capacity building venture. She works in the area of science communication, education, and outreach programs. She works in partnership with K-12 schools and undergraduate colleges to train teachers in the areas of inquiry-based science teaching and learning. And under her powerful leadership, Sanskriti Foundation has trained more than 150 teachers from schools and colleges and about 1,500 students or professionals in the areas of animal models, experimental biology, technical and scientific writing, science communication, and careers in science. To talk about her educational qualification, she obtained her bachelor's and master's degree in zoology, bachelor's from Daulat Ram College, University of Delhi, and master's in marine biotechnology from the Department of Biotechnology, Goa University. Post which she got into doctoral research, and in the 2008 she got her degree from Department of Zoology, University of Delhi. Post which she also obtained her postdoctoral researches at Singapore General Hospital and the Temasek Life Sciences Laboratory, Singapore. Her basic area has been genetics and genomic studies related to animal models like Drosophila and zebrafish. To talk about her current role, she is also training and certification. She has received training and certification in science education, teacher training and pedagogy from Mayo Clinic, Rochester, USA. She is the mentor of change, that is pro bono, as per the Niti Aayog Government of India for the Atal Innovation Program. She's also adjunct faculty and member with the Department of Biotechnology, KIIT University in Bhubaneswar, and she's very pivotal in developing such programs where they reach out to the teachers and try to work on the students' research point of view. And with this short, crisp introduction, I would hand over the forum to Dr. Adita to take over the journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kavita. It was not short for sure, but then I'm humbled. Thank you for giving so much of time for my introduction. I would also like to thank Swapna Pathak for giving us an overview of the department and the college. I understand, Dr. So Swapna, we will be also talking to students. Am I correct? So students will be also joining?
Ma'am, over here, students won't be there. They will be on YouTube link, but
Okay.
they can post their questions in the chat box over YouTube. So we can share the questions through the Google Meet with you.
Okay. So these are master level students, I understand?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Okay. And then the faculty from your college, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
So,
Who are in different stages of their PhD.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, very warm welcome to all the faculty at Khalsa College from my side. And without wasting too much of time, I would start with the topic for today, which is grant writing or writing proposals for government agencies in India. Dr. Swapna, can you see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I'll
Yes,
start
ma'am.
here. So today, in the next 40-45 minutes, we are going to discuss about the art and science of writing effective grants or fellowship applications. I have divided the talk in 3 parts. Part 1, we'll be talking about effective communication. Then we'll move on to the basics of grant writing. And in the third part, we'll be talking about certain funding schemes and resources pertaining to the topic of today, which is fellowships and grant writing. Now, why I chose to start with communication first, because whether you write a grant or you write a research paper or you write your MSc dissertation or your PhD thesis, these all are forms of communication. These are different forms through which you are communicating your science in different contexts to the community. Now, your community essentially consists of researchers, students, faculties, so on and so forth. In the context of grant writing, you are writing for a set of people who would essentially go through your idea or your hypothesis or whatever your proposal is and would offer you a big sum of money. So when a lot of money is at stake, the communication needs to be very, very clear, crisp, and smart. Okay, so let's understand some of the basics of communications, and then we'll move on to the part 2. So imagine yourself that you are about to start writing a grant. You have come across an advertisement or a call for a particular grant or a proposal or a scheme, and you decide to write a grant. Now, the first steps that you would take is you would think on what aspects or on what topics or on what ideas you would be writing your proposal. You might be having several ideas in your mind already, but then you have to zero down on 1 or 2 ideas on which you would be writing a proposal. And the moment you start thinking, your mind also parallelly starts putting them into words. And finally, when you speak or you write, all your thought process sort of comes onto the paper or on the computer these days. So we all write our applications on the system, computer and PCs. So that's the step 1. Now, when we talk about this particular step 1, it is only that single person who is involved here. I am thinking about my idea. I am thinking about all the words, that come to my mind. I am thinking about the way I'm going to, write it. So it's all about myself. This is my idea. This is how I think it should be. This is how I think, it should be put up in words. These are my word choices. These are my objectives, so on and so forth. But communication is more about, making all this seep through the mind of the other person to whom you are trying to communicate. So let's look at the step 2. So step 2 is whatever you have thought about the grant proposal or your idea or your hypothesis, you in a successful state would want that same thing to be sort of understood in the same manner by the listener or the reader or the grant reviewer. Okay, so if you are the speaker or the writer of the grant proposal, you essentially want to transfer all that what you have in your mind in the same way to the grant agency or to the reviewers of the proposal. Because you have had done so much of hard work, you sort of are confident enough that, I can, whatever I have thought, I have written on the paper, I have written in my proposal, and the reviewer should follow it. So that should follow it or must follow it is the problem here. It is the problem in effective communication. We have to think from the other person's side. Though we want the other person to understand, whatever is there in our head. So let's sort of talk more about this. A successful communication is all about superimposing your thoughts onto the other person's mind. The same way you have sort of, tracked them in your mind. So essentially, if you look at this particular dice picture, if the top one is what is there in my head, you see the bottom reflection is what we want to see in our grant reviewer or the person to whom we are trying to communicate. Okay, but this is very hard to achieve. And as the talk goes on, I'll give you certain tips on how to sort of make your reviewer or the grant agency person, stick to your thoughts. So let's go further. A lot of communication goes wrong because we assume a number of things. I have written my application, say, very nicely. It's the best, I could put forward. So I assume that the other person would also see my application the same way I am thinking of in my head. But those assumptions are lethal at times. Okay. So in order to get rid of those assumptions, always think that you are the reviewer. Don't think that you are the writer of the grant. So you have to sort of wear two different kind of hats in the same time frame. So when I'm writing it, when I'm giving shape to my ideas, to my objectives, to my deliverables in a grant, I am me. But the moment I finish writing a section of it, you wear a different hat where you don't assume anything. All you do is to wear the hat of the reviewer and understand what the other person has sort of written and what the other person is trying to communicate. If you sort of, wear these two hats one by one, you will be able to pinpoint on what kind of assumptions you have made in your mind, which may not be very well taken by the reviewer or by the person who is reading your grant proposal. Okay, so assumptions are something which are not to be sort of taken into consideration at all. So with this, I would sort of end the part 1 of my talk with this example. So there is a picture of dice again, and what you can see here is 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 numbers. So this is your mind map, right? But let's see what happens when this thought goes on to another person, say your grant agency person or anybody who is reviewing your proposal. So the picture becomes like this. While it has all the elements what you were trying to convey, it has a 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. Somehow something went wrong in between, such that this person added up this 1 and 2 and made it a 3. Okay, so sometimes these kind of scenarios do happen in communication. Having given this example, it may be that this person's way of thinking is different, or the way you presented was confusing. It could be either of the scenarios, but your goal is to get a grant. So it is not the reviewer who will think of all these scenario. The onus lies much more on you. So you have to think of all possible scenarios which can lead to confusion, which can lead to miscommunication, or which can lead to misinterpretation of what you are trying to present in your grant proposal. So the key is that wear the shoes of the other person to whom you are trying to communicate, whether it's writing a grant or whether it's presenting a seminar or a webinar or whatever. Think from their perspective, and then probably you'll be able to do justice to your writing, and you'll be able to sort of get success in your grant writing as well. So moving on to the other part, which is part 2, grant writing. We write grants for 2 or 3 main reasons. Number 1 is we want to pursue our interests. So whosoever is in the field of sciences, and I'm sure some of the students who are doing their masters are also listening to this talk. So if you're already pursuing masters, and those students who sort of think of pursuing research in future, grant writing or proposal writing would come their way as well. So why do we write a grant, or why do we do a PhD, or why do we choose a research topic? It is out of sheer interest. If that sheer interest is not there, we won't be able to commit and deliver up to the mark. So the interest is number 1 thing. Number 2 is your professional development. Okay, so let's come to the other side now. Let's take an example of a PhD student who is finishing his or her PhD now, and the student goes on and does spend some more year in research, and then again gets a position in a university or in a research institute. Now this person is a faculty or a scientist at a research institute, and the goal here is to develop himself or herself professionally. So the second goal is professional development, and then in research you write grants to sort of get funding and do the kind of research you want to do and develop yourself professionally and scientifically. Okay, and number 3 is very important, is to get money. There is no money, there is no research, and there is no professional development, or you cannot give wings to your interest to fly. So that's very important. And when it comes to a grant or a money aspect, no one is going to give you unless and until the other side is fully convinced. So grant writing is all about convincing your funders or reviewers that whatever idea you are proposing is reasonable enough, is justified enough, and is useful enough. Okay, so funders and agencies, what do they look for in a grant proposal? Essentially 3 things. So here is whatever you are proposing, whether it is useful. So whether it is useful in the context of science, whether it is going to enrich the already built-in knowledge, whether it is going to provide a new kind of a technology, or a new kind of a way out for others to follow. How original is your idea? Now, when we talk about originality, a lot of us struggle. It's always like it is difficult to find ideas, and it is difficult to find novel ideas for a particular field, because nowadays with advancement in science and technology, every field is growing at an exponential phase. So many of the young researchers, sometimes they struggle here a lot. Okay, in the understanding of what originality means. Now, many of them confuse with the fact that my idea has to be, very, very super novel. It doesn't have to be, and it has to be a big idea. So originality doesn't mean always to have a big idea. It means that you can have a very simple idea, but maybe something which no one has thought of before, or something which has not been tried upon before. Maybe people have thought of that idea, but nobody has tried it. So be original, especially for the people who are writing their first time grants. Don't be too too sort of ambitious in your first go. Don't be over ambitious, I would say. Think of simple ideas, write a simple grant and get it in the first place, because the simpler the idea, the easier it is to put in the form of a grant proposal and get a grant. This is for the first timers. And once you get your first grant, you will get a lot of confidence, and then you can build upon, a little bit more of on ambitious project. And there are other angles to it, and we'll discuss it over the next few slides. And the third thing is methods. Now, if I am a reviewer, if I'm sitting in a grant agency, I would certainly look at your idea. I would look at the novelty or the originality of the idea. I would look at the purpose, what purpose it is going to serve. I would also look at what methods are you going to apply in order to make that particular original idea into a useful piece of research or a useful product. So methods are also very important in a grant proposal. Many a times what happens is people have a lot of original ideas. They are also very well versed with the way how they are going to justify the usefulness or the relevance of their idea. But sometimes people write the methods very sloppily. So you lose out here in those kind of scenarios. So you have to give, what I'm trying to tell you here is, you have to give equal weightage to all these three core elements in a grant proposal. Okay, don't spend too much of energy here, and then by the time you come to methods, you are just exhausted enough, and then you just take it for granted that yeah, these are the common methods everyone uses, so I would also write it in the same way. Be a little bit innovative around methods also. So we talked about usefulness, novel idea, methods or tricks or ways with which you will give your idea or your hypothesis the final shape or the final outcome. But there's a fourth element which is also very important, and that fourth element is you. So why this is important? Because say, let's take example of, say, the pandemic with which we all are facing nowadays. So when COVID-19 struck the world, there was an immediate need for diagnostic methods. So the ways, the quicker ways to diagnose COVID-19, previously RT-PCR was the only method, and it would take 2-3 days time. And there was this very, very urgent need for developing different kind of quick and cheap diagnostic methods. Now, imagine a scenario where like 20 people are writing grants for this particular topic. Okay, so all are writing grants for developing quicker and cheaper ways of diagnosing or detecting COVID-19 infection. Okay, so why this U is important here in the context of, say, this example that I gave you? There are 20 people writing the grant, but what is that thing which makes you different from others? Which makes your idea may be different from others, but the way you present it, the way you present your idea, the way you give it shape and form, that sort of adds a lot of value to the proposal. So spend some time on your thought process, on your thinking, on take ownership of your idea. Don't treat a grant application as a mammoth task. Many a times young researchers, they are too overwhelmed. They are like, oh, this is my first grant application. If I'm a faculty in a college, for them the challenge is all the way more, because they will be competing with scientists who are working in research institutions, and an undergraduate college or a postgraduate colleges. There's a lot of difference in the way things function. So many a times the first time college faculty is also overwhelmed. So don't get overwhelmed. Just identify your strengths and take the ownership of your idea. How you would want your idea to be presented. Okay, so that's very important. The moment we think, oh, we are in too much of competition, we are sitting in a college versus we are competing with people who are sitting in research institutes, so on and so forth. If the way you look at yourself, it would change the way you are putting down your application. So that's very important. it doesn't matter from where you are applying, whether you are sitting in a college or a research institution or in a university department, it doesn't matter. All that matters is these three elements and your own ownership of the idea or the hypothesis or the proposal that you are trying to put up. So spend some time, giving yourself a pep talk that, you have different strengths and you are going to put them to use while writing the proposal. Moving on, like I gave you the example of COVID-19 detection kits or COVID-19 diagnosis. So given the pandemic, number of applications are pouring in on different ways of detecting it and different ways of, how to make it cheaper, how to make it quicker, so on and so forth. Now, if I'm a grant reviewer, I would have, say, 20 to 25 applications. And as the picture here suggests, it's very confusing. They look, the two pictures here, they look very much same with minor differences here and there. So when you are competing with a lot of people in similar area or in similar field, it's good. I mean, there's nothing wrong in that. Some people just change their areas. Oh, there's a lot of competition here, I would not want to try here. I would think of something else. So don't jump on from one area to another just because there's a lot of competition. Rather than that, focus on the unique selling point. What is the unique selling point of your idea or the hypothesis or whatever product you are trying to develop and putting up in your grant proposal? So spend some time on that and think in what ways your, say, let's take the example of this detection thing again. So in what ways your detection kit for, say, COVID-19 would be better than the other. Maybe it's cheaper, it's in the same price range. Somebody else is also proposing a 200 rupees kit versus you are also proposing a 200 rupees kit. But maybe what is that unique thing that is there in your project. So when you write your project, you have to highlight that, because reviewers are very smart. Okay, they would just bin all the applications which are of same kinds together and would just look for one or two areas in your application and they would decide. Okay, if there are similar applications on a similar field of research, reviewers would not spend, all the time reading all the 20 applications. They would rather want to pinpoint in areas where, the important information lies, where the USP lies. So if you are a smart grant writer, you would want to highlight those areas in your application. And we will talk about those other things later on. Coming to ideas, now many a time young researchers, even people who are senior in their field, they have to choose ideas for writing grants. And there's no dearth of ideas in human minds. There are a lot of ideas, but when you sort of classify those ideas, they fall into three major categories in the context of writing grants and proposal. Number one is obvious but hard. So you can say that, yeah, this is an obvious need in research, but it is hard to achieve. Say cancer research, for that matter. Everybody knows it is obvious. We have different kinds of cancers and we are struggling to develop different kind of biomarkers and quick and easy diagnostics, so on and so forth. So it's very obvious, but it's hard. The other kind of ideas are easy and overcrowded. Okay, so here you see a lot of people sort of competing with each other. A lot of people also choose for this set of ideas because they are easy, but they ignore the fact that there's a lot of crowd here. Okay, and many a times when you choose your idea in this particular field, because of the crowd there and because of the lapses in the way you write your application, you are not able to sort of make it through. Having said that, I am not saying that don't choose a easy and overcrowded idea. You may go ahead and choose it. It's your choice because it's your idea. But be a little bit smart such that your idea stands out in this particular crowd as well. And those are, important considerations when you write your grant. So if I'm, say, writing a grant, say, for assessing drug toxicity, say, in a model system, I should also be aware of the research going on in my country in that particular area. I should be mindful. I should be knowing about what all is happening. I should be knowing my competitors, my possible competitors. You can't be writing your grant in one room on a study table, not knowing about what is happening around and who all are your competitors. The moment you know your competitors, you will write your application. It will sort of automatically trigger you to write your application such that you surpass them. So it's very, very important to, keep reading and keep researching upon what is going on in the particular field in which, your interest lies. The third kind of ideas are not obvious and are hard. So these are essentially ideas which even the funders would sort of give a second thought. These two kinds of ideas, they get funding still easily, but these are the ideas even the funders would give a thought. Talking about why I sort of kept this slide was identify the idea that you have. Try and sort of, understand your idea lies in which of the category. It is very important. Unless and until you understand the category of your idea, you won't be able to sort of put it in words in the way such that it gets selected. So this slide is also connected to the previous slide, how to weigh the strength of your project or the idea. So in research, sometimes ideas are incremental in nature. When I say incremental in nature, okay, this is already done, and I would move a step ahead in the same field, maybe the same system, maybe the same gene or the same protein. Okay, so this knowledge is available for a particular gene function or a gene or a protein or a product, and I am going to sort of add increments to it, add value to it. So maybe your idea falls into that kind of a category, which is okay. Now, maybe the research idea is already around, and the twist that you give is it will provide certain added benefits, maybe long-term or short-term. Okay. The other thing is that whether your idea is providing an answer to the knowledge gap which is there in the field, or it is providing an answer to the application gap which is existing in the field.
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your voice is breaking in between.
Okay, so I'll just talk slowly. Okay. I
Okay,
think the connection is right, but I'll just slow down. Okay.
It happens like at intervals, maybe like after 10 minutes or so, slowly, that voice will crack for some time and then again it resumes back normal, something like that.
Okay, maybe the connection.
So maybe the strength of internet. Yeah.
Okay,
ma'am.
No problem. If people miss out on something, we can take that in questions and answers. Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
So So whether your idea fills a knowledge gap or an application gap, that you also have to identify. And at the bottom, it is whether you have a hypothesis or it is fishing driven. Fishing driven means the not so obvious and the hard idea, means which is not very obvious and the hard type of category that I showed you in the previous slide, means you are just trying in a uncharted territory. You are just trying to explore something, which reviewers might say that out of the blues, So maybe those kind of ideas are fishing driven ideas, that I will jump into the sea and see what is there. Okay. Hypothesis driven ideas are more organized. You work around a hypothesis, you have a question to answer, you have certain, objectives around it. So identify which kind of thought or idea you have and then write accordingly. Okay. So all these, a thought process on all these different, tangents would give you an idea about how competitive your grant is. Okay, let's take example of a incremental grant. Sometimes if you are trying to sort of enhance the knowledge base, if you're trying to enhance the knowledge on whatever is already existing in an incremental manner, the funding agencies, they just, they give you the grant, because it depends upon uh, the kind of calls they have announced. Essentially for early career researchers who are they are in the very first years of their research, like someone who has done a postdoc and have just joined as a scientist. So mostly these people, they write grants based on their postdoctoral research on the topic on which they have already been working, and they want to add an incremental value to it. So these kinds of grants are easy to get, unless and until you are writing it, you are not writing it in a bad way. So assess your idea in terms of all these different aspects and then write accordingly. Yeah, so I have sort of spoken at length about all these things. So wear the shoes of your funding agency reviewers. Think in mind what they would think. Always use these keywords: relevance, purpose, utility, meaning, context, when you are writing your grant application. Always revisit these keywords again and again. Revisiting these keywords and sort of mapping them to your application would also help you make your application come out in a very clear and concise manner. Yeah, so these are some of the examples of comments which reviewers have given to certain grant applications. Many people have submitted grants, and these are comments from reviewer. So let us take these comments one by one. So here the reviewer writes, I could see additional hypotheses other than the main hypothesis. I kept looking for justification but could not find it. So sometimes what happens is, during grant applications, when you write a grant application, if your idea is a hypothesis driven one, you write about that hypothesis. All your objectives are based on that hypothesis. All your deliverables are also aligned to the objectives in the context of that hypothesis. But suddenly you sort of divert, and then there is something new which is not connected to your original hypothesis. So many a times the researchers, they write grant applications and they do this kind of errors in there, which confuses the reviewer. Okay, which confuses the reviewer whether the additional hypothesis is actually connected to the original hypothesis, or if there is a divergence. If there is a divergence in the mind of the grant writer, will the person be able to execute it in a clear way? So all these kinds of thoughts, they arise in the mind of the reviewer. Now the other one is explanation on how this study would contribute to the field is weak. So whatever you are proposing, if you're not able to explain what addition it is going to make to the research area, if you're not able to explain it strongly, then also it puts off the reviewer. Then let's look at this. The preliminary data provided is scarce, not enough to ensure success. Now, if I am a funding agency and I'm giving you a good amount of money to conduct your research, I also have to take into account the success of the project, okay, from the mind of a reviewer. I don't want you to fail as a researcher. So my job is to make sure that the grant application has all the elements so that it reaches its success outcomes. So if a grant proposal is based on a preliminary data and all your hypotheses and all your objectives are based on that particular data, and if that data itself is not complete or incomplete, or there are problems of validation there, the grant reviewer would sort of reject your application. Sometimes it's a common practice in research that you don't write very specific objectives, because nobody can predict the outcomes of research. Things may go wrong, or you might get results that may change the whole direction of your research itself. You might have to revise your objectives. So sometimes people say that the researchers, they always put broad scope, but there's a fine line in putting a broad scope versus a overdone thing. So be wary of that fine line. You know, your hypothesis or your idea should not be too broad such that the focus is lost. So that is also something which reviewers keep in mind. And this is something related to the logistics. So sometimes when we write grant application, budget is an important part, because it's the most important part rather, because this is where you ask for manpower, for equipment, for chemicals, so on and so forth. And if you are requesting for an equipment, and if it's the justification is not given reasonably, that also puts off the reviewer. So don't give them an idea that, you know, you have just put something for the sake of putting it. Your equipment requirements, your chemical requirements must tie up with your experimental plan and with your objectives. So keep all these things in mind. Sometimes reviewers have a problem that principal investigator is too junior. So nowadays, a lot of call applications, there is a provision of co-PI. So there will be a principal investigator and there will be a co-principal investigator. If you are pitching for a very, very ambitious grant and you are a young faculty, it is good to have a senior faculty as the PI and you be the co-PI, provided, you know, the equation sort of balances out at your institute nicely. So some people do take that kind of a course. You can even apply as a PI even if you are junior, but it all depends upon what is happening at the grants agency's end. So all is not black and white in this scenario, but then yes, we can navigate keeping some of the things in mind. So before writing a grant, you need to understand the grant review process. I have already taken you through the minds of a grant reviewer, how the grants are reviewed, what the reviewer thinks. Keep in mind the selection criteria. So always think, if you would be the reviewer, what will be your selection criteria? Would you go for the idea? Would you go for the institute from where the PI is applying? Would you go for other things, deliverables, what a person is promising? So keep in mind and then write accordingly. In India, most of the grant proposals are full proposals, which means you write a grant application and you are done with that. A few of the grant proposals in India are also pre-proposals, means the review process is two-stage process. First, they will ask you for the shorter proposal. They will just want to understand what your ideas are, and if they like your idea, they would ask you to write a full proposal. Okay. It's very important to stick to the guidelines and the rules. So I'll give you an example of one of my friends who was writing for a women scientist grant by DST. And there's a cap for budget. So your maximum budget should be some 30 lakhs or whatever, 28 lakhs. So for these kind of very well-written calls, in which there is no room for, things going here and there, stick to those kind of rules. Don't try and play with the rules there. Just sort of manage your application within the rules and the guidelines. Don't create your own rules, or don't assume again that, let me write this and it may go through. So assumptions again are not good here in this context as well. Okay. So when it comes to writing concisely and clearly, avoid repetitive information. Don't overemphasize and overclaim. So sometimes we keep on repeating things. Okay. Just to make sure that, my idea is important. You need to repeat things in your proposal, but in a different way, and we'll talk about that. So don't overemphasize and overclaim. And then the last point is very important. If you are a first-time grant writer, please get your proposal peer reviewed. Give it to your seniors in the college, give it to your mentors, give it to your, PhD advisor. Reach out to as many people as you. Don't shy away. Take helps of others, because they, if they are your mentors, if they are your senior colleagues, they want to you to, you know, also shine like how they have been shining in research. They would give you very, very constructive inputs. So please don't shy away. Don't think that, you know, this I'm very this thing, should I show it to this person or that person? Because if you don't get it peer reviewed, if it's your first grant, probably there will be a lot of room for you know, errors here and there, and you might stand a rejection in that case. So gather courage and put out your grant to your friends and your colleagues before it reaches the funding agency. Now, questions to ask yourself. We have sort of covered this, but I will just sort of repeat this. You should be very clear in your mind about the why of your proposal. Why are you writing this proposal? What is the idea? What for you are writing? What contribution your research would make to the field? What is the knowledge gap that you are trying to fill? The who's who of your proposal is also very important. The who's who means which institute, who is the PI, and when I say which institute, that doesn't mean that you have to come from the highly ranked institute. Means how you are showcasing your institute in your application with respect to the idea or the proposal that you are trying to submit. Okay, if I'm trying to submit a project, say on sequencing, and if my institute doesn't have any say background in sequencing, if nobody is having projects on sequencing, and then my competence might be questioned. I'm saying might be questioned, not always, because that competence, that level of competence, say for sequencing, does not exist in the institute. But somebody may argue that there are first timers who bring sequencers to institute. So whatever it is, you have to justify your competence. Maybe you have had used a DNA sequencer in your postdoc, and you have joined an institute, and you are now willing to create a sequencing facility there. So you have to showcase your strengths, your institute strengths, in a very, very smart manner. Okay. Now your idea will also have a central theme, your central hypothesis or a central core theme, and which you will be dividing into objectives, say objective 1, objective 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. And most of the time these objectives are interconnected. They go step by step. Sometimes they are not, but mostly they are. So when you write your proposal, always keep in mind these central themes and these connecting links. As you go section by section, don't forget to highlight, don't forget to repeat these links and the central theme, because these things would keep the reviewer focused. Okay, don't think that, okay, I've already talked about my objectives there in the objectives section, so I cannot talk about it in the next section or in the methods section. The way you write it would change, but then it should very well be obvious and visible in the other sections also, such that as a reviewer, if I'm reading a 20-page grant application, by the time I start and by the time I end, I am very clear about all these objectives. I am very clear about the central theme. I am also clear about how these things, they flow from the objectives to the milestones, to the deliverables, so on and so forth. So if you do this, wherever you want your reviewer to focus, they will focus. Okay, so be smart with that. Keep signpost in your application. Make life easy for reviewers. Okay, don't submit a cluttered application. Don't write annexures and tables here and there such that they are confused. Your signpost must be labeled nicely. You should have good number of signposts so that they can navigate through your applications. Be coherent and put information which is relevant to your idea and hypothesis. And I'll just take an example here. So I would want you to focus on the second paragraph here, and I have color coded it. And if you look at different colors, if you read through these different statements, none of the statement is interconnected. So for example, the statement number 1 is giving information on the genome. The statement number 2 is giving information, a general information that COVID-19 is a pandemic. And the statement number 3, which is in green, is giving information on the symptoms and recovery and whatnot. So in a paragraph, none of the statement is talking to each other. It's just, pieces of information on a particular topic which are compiled together, which also irritates the reviewer. So if I'm a reviewer, if I'm reading about genome, I would expect that something about genome is coming in the next line as well, but then a general thing comes up here and then something else comes up here. So please avoid these kind of information overload and stuff like this. Then objectives we have talked about. Most of the objectives are interrelated. They should have interrelatedness. They should be feasible. They should match your skills, your budget, the facilities that you have in your institutes, and the time frame. And your objectives should be accompanied by the milestones and deliverables. So milestones means if I'm writing a 3 years grant, my objective number 1 should be finished by this time, and it should be delivering this and this particular outcome. Okay. Let's take example of objectives in the context of milestones and deliverables. Suppose you write an objective to understand function of a particular gene in zebrafish. Let us see what will be the milestone and what will be the deliverable. So milestone will be characterization of mutants in the gene, and deliverable may be a journal publication. Once you characterize the gene mutant, you can very well go ahead and publish it. Now let's look at the interrelated objective. Now your proposal may have a specific objective number 2, which is also related to 1. So having identified the mutant or having understood the gene function, now you want to see the targets of this particular protein. So the milestones here will be a different kind of a research path, which will be, you will look at all the signaling pathways for the genes or for the proteins, so on and so forth. So like this, you should be writing your objectives and you should be navigating through your applications. The experimental plan must be clear, simple, and people must be able to visualize it. If you are writing your experiment, I should be able to visualize it. Okay, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. And experimental plan, you must be able to assess the risk and build contingency plans. And all your plans must be accompanying a justification in the context of, again, your central themes and all your objectives. Let's take example of justification here. So let's read through this. Suppose this is a paragraph from the experimental plan in a grant application. So the writers are going to do something using a particular technique. Now the person who has written the grant has also foreseen that it may happen that the results may not be obtained. So what he or she will do, in case that happens, we will attempt to optimize by doing method improvisation or standardization. So they will write about all these things. If this even does not work, we will opt for a different technique or method. And then the writer writes that we would probably change the approach or change the method, and would also give details of those methods and approaches. So if experimental plan is written with this kind of foresight, the reviewer generally, they get impressed that okay, the person has thought through all the steps which may happen. If you get the result in the first place, fine. If you don't, you have thought about the future things. Now clarity, simplicity, and visualization. So I will talk about the visualization part here. Suppose somebody has written this: we will validate the system in human cell lines. It's a very general kind of a statement. It doesn't give much information. Then the other objective is, we will examine the effects of X in human cell lines. So how this is very general, because I'm not able to visualize anything as a reviewer. Let's see the better version of this. We will validate the system in human cell lines by examining whether X reduces the proliferation. So here I can visualize that if you add X to the cell line, it might impact the proliferation in some way or the other. If we see no effect of X, it may be due to action of other effectors. Yes, you are also thinking about what will happen next, which we will check by so and so method. So This kind of writing probably will not give any information to your reviewer, will not give any visualization to your reviewer. But if you write in this particular way, the reviewer is able to imagine and would also be able to map through your thought process, whatever you have. So project mapping, whatever is the status quo you are trying to address, objectives, milestones, and deliverables, they should all talk to each other. There should be no deviations of what is said in the objectives versus the milestones and the deliverables. So keep focused and tie these things together, again, in the context of the knowledge gap, the contribution, and the competence you are trying to build up with respect to your ideas. So in the end of your grant application, you just get rid of all the clutter. Edit your application. After you have written it, whatever we have discussed so far, keep in mind all those things and edit your application. Be the reviewer. Now, whatever you don't like, get rid of it. Whatever is confusing, get rid of it. Whatever could be misinterpreted by the reviewer, if there is even a slightest chance, just get rid of it. So edit your application in the end. See that all the sections are talking to each other. This is the last part of my talk. Dr. Kavita, are we on time? Can we take another 5 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So since many of you are early career researchers, some of you are already in your PhDs, and maybe you have ideas, wonderful ideas waiting to be put in the form of a grant proposal. So in this section, I will give you just a brief overview of, resources and funding schemes. This section is particularly focused on women scientists. This year, the theme for science and technology has also been, women in science. So my apologies to all the male colleagues who are listening to this, but let's go through this. So there is this resource called Spurti. You can get it on the India Bioscience website. So this is a resource that they have put up. It's a very good resource on Indian women in science, and it gives you a sort of sneak peek into all the schemes which are available for women researchers in science. So I will not go through the details of it. You can log on to India Bioscience website, and it's a free resource. You can download it and read it to yourself. For college faculty, there's a scheme which is called Teachers Associateship for Research Excellence. It's TARE. It's by SERB. Due to COVID pandemic, the applications are suspended. But then I understand that they would resume because government is also focusing a lot on promoting undergraduate research. So this is one scheme which many of my, undergraduate faculties have tried their hands upon, and they have got it also. Women Scientist Scheme by DST is a very popular scheme. There are 3 verticals here, A, B, and C. A is for researchers, those who want to pursue a research idea. B is for entrepreneurs, if you have a technology product or if you have any kind of social entrepreneurship which involves elements of scientific research. The B scheme is for those. And the C is for essentially, the C scheme is for IPR manpower development. So those who are interested in, alternate areas like IPR, which are now becoming, I would not say alternate areas, I would say it is rather a key area in the science and technology scenario nowadays. So those who can, who have an interest in IPR can also opt for WAS-C. Then there are a couple of schemes from DBT, and one is the BioCare grants for women scientists. And I have essentially highlighted here a very important point. The women scientists who are unemployed will be provided a monthly emolument of so on and so forth. So if you are a researcher who has just ended your PhD and have not got any kind of employment, you can still write a grant and get your own fellowship. And more options like this are existing. Just refer to the Spurti resource, and I would also be sharing more resources with you later on. University funding is also an important source. so I am based out of in Delhi, and there was a time when University of Delhi started innovation projects, and these projects were given to the faculty of undergraduate colleges. So I happened to be the mentors on one of those projects. So essentially, the undergraduate faculty writes the projects and they execute it, and there is a scientific mentor who would sort of mentor the faculty. And I'm sure these kind of opportunities are existing in any and every universities. All you need is to keep an eye open for these kind of calls. There are international grants available as well. So UCARI is a very important and very popular grant. But for these kind of international grants, you need to know someone in the UK. If you or your PhD advisor or your scientific network has any connection with somebody in UK, and you both the parties are willing to work on a common research topic, then undergraduate faculties can even apply for these kind of calls as well. Okay, but having said all this, all you need to do is to you keep working, keep doing your research, keep building up your CV, keep gathering the skills. So I guess, yeah, I will just stop here and would take questions.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah, I would also want to add one more thing here, Dr. Kavita. In the
Yes, ma'am.
interest of time, I have not taken samples of grants. So I've
Okay.
kept it a very general orientation on what to, sort of keep in mind while writing a grant. Because in the interest of time, if I'm able to walk you through a grant application, it will take more time. So we can reschedule another session. I have no issues around it. So
Surely, ma'am.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that I can open a grant and I can walk you through all the steps and all the different sections and subsections.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be happy to do that with your faculty whenever we have time later for another hour or so that you all
Certainly,
get
ma'am.
the whole package together.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so over to you, and we'll be happy to take questions.
My colleague,
Yes,
Miss
ma'am.
Anandi Rebello, will be taking care of the question answers.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. Thank you, Kavita, ma'am. Ma'am, first question is, how much time does it take to prepare a grant proposal?
Very good question. Very good question. So, if you have been thinking of the idea, for quite some while, it would not take much time in putting up the skeleton of the proposal. Okay. If you're already working on something and you are thinking of that in future I would be able to take up this research project in this and this direction, then the skeleton of the grant can be put in a quick time, which is like a week's time, and then you can spend another 2 weeks on sort of making the grant much more clear and following all the tips that I have shared with you all. If suppose a grant has come out and suddenly you start thinking, can I do something related to the grant? Then that case, if there is time, take all the time. Don't rush at the last moment. Okay. Sometimes, like in the COVID times, many new calls have been announced. So in these kind of scenarios, if you suddenly have an idea, then you would also require more time to sort of put it in place. Okay, but a month, I would say, in any scenario, in any kind of scenario, a month is a good time to write a grant such that it reaches success. Don't wait for the last minute that, okay, it's 6 months time for the grant submission, I will write in the last 1 month, because ideas you will get. So it's good to evolve your grant. If there is a call in July and you have to submit it in
Ma'am, you are not
I
audible
think
for
I
a while.
connection.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Your yes,
Yeah. Yeah, so
Hello,
I'll just
ma'am.
repeat. I'll just say that if the idea is already in your head, it should just take a week or 10 days time for the skeleton of the grant to get ready. But then if it's a new call, you need to spend 1 month's time. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Shall we take another question? Have I answered?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Correct. Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, second question is, what if the grant which is submitted is getting rejected? If it gets rejected, then what will be the next step, ma'am?
Okay. So many a times funding agencies don't provide you the information why your grant is rejected. Okay. Uh, mm, so it would be good. It would be good to sort of again, if you have not shown it to any of your seniors or colleagues, right? Show it to them, get it peer reviewed, and have their comments on your grants. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
The
ma'am.
next step would be to improvise on the grant. Yeah. And rejection may just not happen because you have not got it peer reviewed. Rejection may happen because of many things that I covered during the talk. Maybe you have written an additional hypothesis and not justified it. Maybe the competence at the level of institute infrastructure is not there. So many a times the grants are rejected because there is a lot of mismatch with respect to these things. Okay. It's not always that your idea was bad, right? So idea
Yes, ma'am.
needs a proper organization, or a proper structure and the proper environment to get executed. So most of the time it's not the idea, it is the mismatch that may happen when you are writing the grant. So next step is to identify those mismatches. Okay. And see if
नहीं,
you
बस
have
5 मिनट
flouted
और हो
any
गए.
guidelines. See if one section of the grant is not talking to the other. See if you have overclaimed. So look for all these things and revise your grant, and then submit. Sometimes the funding agency themselves, they would ask you to revise, you know but if there is a lot of mismatch, that you should be doing this or that. But if there is one thing here and there, sometimes they do even ask you to revise it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Does that answer the question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, can I ask
Am I audible,
question, ma'am?
Anandi?
Yes, ma'am. You're audible, ma'am. You're audible, ma'am. Ma'am, third question is, what shall be the length of grant proposal which is submitted? The length of grant proposal, ma'am.
So right. So nowadays, if you look at, say, SERB grant, Scientist Engineering Research Board grants, so they will have a template. They will have their own template for grant writing, and there would be sections and subsections in which they would also advise you to adhere to the word limit. Okay. So when this kind of information is provided beforehand, it becomes easier for the researcher to write, within the word limit. But say for women scientist projects, say women scientist A project, there is no word limit. So it is good to be clear, concise, and short, right? Don't equate that the more you write, the more information you are providing. Okay, and remember my last slide, that edit your grant. Keep it simple. Don't be over repetitive. Many a times when there is no word limit, people becomes, a lot of repetition is there, and it puts off the reviewer. So for applications where there is already a template, stick to the rules, stick to the guidelines of whatever number of words they have given. Don't assume that I can even write 200 more words and what will matter. Don't do that, because the number of grants application pouring into agencies office is huge. So if like 100 people are writing 200 words extra, it's a lot of words for them. So don't take those kind of assumptions in mind. And if there is no word limit, just don't keep on writing. Keep it simple, keep it precise, and avoid repetition. So that's it. I mean,
Yes,
write
ma'am.
point wise. Use graphs, use flow charts, they are the elements which can give your grant reviewer an idea that okay, you have thought through the process. He might not even want to read the grant if the flow charts and if the tables and figures are in place. So use them and it would be much more quicker and much more palatable than lots of words.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, next question is it necessary to have some previous publications on the topic? What are the chances if no such preliminary publications have not been done?
Okay, so every grant proposal has a section about the CV or the biodata of the PI or the co-PI, and in that section they do ask if you have previous publications. Okay, so this is there, but let's take a scenario wherein I'm a new scientist. I have just finished my postdoc, and I'm trying to sort of start a research area which is new, which is not entirely connected to my previous research background. Okay, but still I do have publications. I have a track record of publications wherein sort of I have done research. So for early career researchers, it is not much of a deal. For the funding agency, again, if your proposal is well written and if all the sections are talking to each other. If you are relatively new, that's why many of the grant proposals have an option of PI, co-PI. So maybe if you are venturing into a new area, it is a smart decision to collaborate with someone who has some know-how of that particular area, and sometimes both can be the principal investigators. Sometimes one can be the PI and the other can be the co-PI. Other thing is that yes, you are new to the system, but many funding agencies, they also have scope of mentors. So I'll give you an example. Like I collaborate with Daulat Ram College, and the faculty there wanted to start a zebrafish lab. They have no previous expertise of zebrafish, but they wanted to start a lab, and they applied to Delhi University for funding. So in the research application, there was a column for mentorship, which a established zebrafish researcher can provide. So sometimes the applications have these kind of provisions which can help a person start a totally new field. So I think, yeah, just explore out what kind of a application call suits you the best. So that is also an exercise that you need to do. Okay, if I want to start a new thing but I have no experience, let me look out for a funding agency which can give me a grant provided I have a mentor, or provided I have a provision for two PIs, one who is already established in the field, and look for collaborations. So nowadays all research is collaborative. So I mean, keep in touch with collaborators, go to people, talk about your ideas, so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. There is one more question. Origin of proposal and research problem. These two are different heads in the most of the proposals.
Yes.
What exactly should come under these two heads, avoiding repetition?
Okay, so origin was where the whole thing started from. Okay. And research problem is, again, so let's take example of coronavirus again, because we all are struggling, and that's why we are having it in online mode. It has advantages as well. So there is this virus which struck the whole world, right? A set of people are working on the protein receptor through which the virus enters the cell. Okay. Another set of researchers are working on the diagnostic. Another set of researchers, medical researchers, are developing vaccines. So if you see the origin here, the origin is common for all these people, right? So the research problem I am developing vaccine, so I will write about my objectives around the vaccine part of it. Somebody is developing diagnostic, yes. Somebody is doing drug repurposing, so they will look at that aspects. But the original background would be the same for all of these. So origin is the enduring information, the enduring understanding you have on that particular topic, and what was the second section? One was origin and the other one was
Research problem, ma'am.
research
Origin of
problem. Yeah.
proposal. Yes.
So research problem, the problem that you would want to address might be very different. Okay, it might be one of the verticals of the thing, right? So the pandemic describes this in a very, very good fashion. So vaccine researcher versus drug repurposement versus diagnostic versus, the fundamental research on how the virus entry is happening into the cells versus the epidemiological research versus the pathology research. So all these are different verticals of the same common problem. So these are the differences.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, there is one more question.
Mhm.
As an Indian student, suppose we want to apply or we want to ask for funding from foreign funding agency,
Yes.
then how to find out the information about it?
So, okay, good. So, this is a question from student, right?
Yes, ma'am. Research student only, ma'am.
So the student is wanting to apply for a foreign grant.
Yes, ma'am. Foreign funding from yes, ma'am. Foreign grant.
So again, most of the philanthropists or most of the funding agencies have offices in India. Say, for example, let's take case of DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance. So Wellcome Trust is a trust in UK which give research funding, right? Then we have Commonwealth scholarships, using which you can either work in India or you can work in Commonwealth countries. Okay, you have Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. If your research idea is well enough, you can have a foreign funding resource. You can still work in India or you can work abroad. So look for all these important philanthropic trusts, and if you apply for a foreign grant to say university, if say a foreign university is giving you, universities mostly would want you to come there and work for them in that geographical territory. But these kind of trusts and alliances would give you grants which will come from a India foreign kind of a fund, and you can still avail it while being in India. So if I have to say, these are prestigious awards because they are out of an alliance of other nations funding in collaboration with Indian research landscape. So that you can do, but you can't be taking funding from a foreign university and working in India. That essentially doesn't happen. I also gave you example of UCARI grant, wherein a college faculty can take funding and go to UK, provided there is a lab in the UK. So faculty level, yes, you can go for short-term grants, not for 5 years or 6 years. So you have both short-term and long-term grants, but then you have to look in for all these details on the websites of all these different trusts and alliances.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, as such, now there are no questions in the chat box.
Mm-hmm. Any questions from the faculty?
Maybe the faculty is present in the forum here. Maybe if they have any questions, they can ask a quick one.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Ma'am, I have a question. Generally,
Yeah.
how much, what is the duration taken by the funding agency to go through the proposal and grant? Neglecting the current situation otherwise.
Yeah. So normally they would take somewhere, I would say 6 months is a good time, which a funding agency would take. It also depends upon the range of the call, how big a call is. Say, for example, if there is a huge call, say of 10 crores for institutes and all, it might take a bit of extra time because the competition is high there, and say 50 research institutions from India are applying for that grant. So it depends upon the volume of the grant also. Okay. If it's just a short volume grant, say 25 lakhs or so, normally you would get information somewhere between 3 to 6 months. But if it's a huge volume grant where a lot of stakeholders are involved, where multi parties are involved, collaborative events are involved, and then in that case, it might take a longer time.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
My senior ma'ams, ma'am is
Yeah.
waiting for questions. Yeah, ma'am.
No worries. I can. Okay. I just had a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
That
Yes, ma'am.
it is commonly seen that I mean, when I talk to some of my colleagues and friends, it is always that comes out. The conclusion is that only these IITs and IIMs and big institutions gets funding, whereas colleges. I mean, if I talk about, let's say, our college, they are not in their list, and therefore you have you will be neglected or your proposal will be rejected. So is it actually the scenario, or like does the institutional weightage also matters? That's my question.
So there are two sides to it. Yes, institutional weightage does matter because people who are at institutions have already shown their credibility and have shown some level of success. And again, I would say your idea is connected to a chunk of money, and money is the issue here. So the funding agencies have to given a lot of thought in giving that chunk of money to somebody who has not shown either the credentials or the authenticity. Having said that, it is not the scenario that somebody who is sitting in a college would not get a grant. Okay. Now I'll give you suppose I'm a teaching faculty in a college, and I'm if I'm in good connection, if I'm in good network. But by networking, I don't say that you go to that person and that person will help you get a grant. I don't mean that. Networking means you all are based in Bombay. There are many research institutes in Bombay, big known institutes. So you must start working with those research institutes in some way or the other, such that there is a kind of endorsement. I would not say that there's a kind of professional scientific endorsement to your grant proposal, that yes, this person has been actively working in the area of research. It should not say this person has been actively working with me per se, but yes, that sort of demonstrates that you are active in research, you are trying to explore new horizons, you are trying to network with researchers and people in the community. You are discussing your ideas with scientists or other senior faculties who are into research in and around your geographical territory. So that is very important. In that kind of a case, generally you would get a grant. Say I gave you the example that Delhi University started some projects wherein you needed a mentor. So how people from say IGIB became mentors to these set of undergraduate faculties, because these faculties, they came to IGIB, they stated their interest, they underwent a training in zebrafish system, they showed interest, they say please train us in the system, we would want to write a grant. So in those kind of situations, when the senior colleagues or senior researchers or people who are already established in the field, when they actually see your interest and commitment, they don't mind being your mentors, and they will also help you develop the grant proposal. So keep the network on. Sitting aloof in a college would not make it easy for you. I would not say that you would never be able to get it, but that's how research works. Even people who are sitting in CSIR institutions, they are collaborating with scientists, they take feedback from other scientists. So that is very important. In a college, I understand, because there are demands of teaching, the faculties are not able to sort of match up to that kind of a level, but still at your own pace you can keep, those kind of uh, collaborations on. You can seek a small research internship over a period of 3 weeks in a research lab, and show your interest and develop your ideas. And I'm sure these kind of collaborations would bring projects to college as well. So you have to make your way around. Otherwise, in the new education policy also, people are saying that you have to promote research at undergraduate level. Unless and until research is made a part of the curriculum, the undergraduate faculty cannot do justice to it. It is too much of an ask. So these are some of the problems at the level of undergraduate faculty. But I would again say that there is a lot of scope. All you need is to take that extra step and establish those professional and scientific connections and networking. Does that answer your
That was
question?
definitely, ma'am. Yes, it does. I think with that, if there are no more questions, any questions from the team?
No, ma'am. There are no questions as such in the chat box also, ma'am. No questions,
Okay, no
ma'am.
problem. So in
Yes,
that
ma'am.
case, maybe, so I would like to thank you, ma'am. It was an enlightening presentation, a lot of connectivity to what are required, the key ingredients, so to say, of grant writing. We have got all of them, how to have the cohesiveness, etc. So I'm sure we are looking forward to the next session. I'll get in touch with you when and how we can plan it. And thank you very much for your time and sharing your expertise, ma'am. I would request my colleague, Ms. Mariamal, to give away the formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, all.
Good evening.
As we come to an end of today's event, I would like to thank you, ma'am, Adita, ma'am, for joining here and spending your valuable time. And thank you and congratulations to all the participants that shows your strong commitment and interest towards your research. The aim of the whole session to arrange today by Kavita ma'am is just simple but very much needed for the day. It is to pave the path for channelizing the young research minds, because they have so many infinite ideas, innovative ideas, but at the end of the day, due to monetary issues and especially women, they face a lot in implementing their ideas. So they were actually not in touch with how to go about. So thank you, ma'am, for throwing light on that. What are the different agencies available? What are the organizations which we can approach? Via what? And what are the different things we can think of depending our situation? Thank you, ma'am. And thank you, Kavita, ma'am, for arranging such an event. And I would like to thank my colleagues as well to carry out this smoothly. And also, I extend my thanks to IT team, Ashish and Aldrin, for channelizing this event live on social network. We now have a formal feedback link displayed in the chat box of YouTube. The participants can fill it, and you all will receive the certificate in days.
Okay, ma'am. So with this, we formally end with the session. It was indeed a great one. I'll get in touch with you, ma'am.
Okay, it was a pleasure talking to all of you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Simran. Thank you, Gauri, ma'am. Thank you, IT team. Yes, one more event down. It was good one. Chalo then, guys. We are off the YouTube.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Great.
We can leave the meet. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we all can leave the meeting. Chalo. Yeah. Bye.
Yes. Bye, ma'am. Bye, ma'am.
Bye,
Bye,
ma'am. Take
all.
care. Bye.